Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely pumped you're here for today's explainer, because honestly, we're looking at a story that completely flips everything we thought we knew about building wealth upside down. I want you to just imagine something for a second. Imagine working as a janitor your entire life. You never pull in a six-figure salary, you don't own some flashy startup, and you never invent a crazy product or strike it rich playing the lottery. You just do your job day in, day out. But when you finally hit retirement, you're a multi-millionaire. It sounds totally unbelievable, right? It sounds like some made-up Hollywood script. But today, we're diving into the true power of investing early, and we're going to see exactly how this seemingly impossible scenario is actually 100% real.
So, this brings us to the ultimate question we've got to answer today. How on earth does a janitor retire with millions? When we hear a story like this, our brains immediately start looking for the catch. We're looking for the secret inheritance, the lucky lottery ticket, or some massive gambling payout. But what if I told you there is no catch? This isn't a story about getting lucky. It's not about taking massive, reckless risks. Instead, it's about one single, highly learnable financial habit, a habit that literally almost anyone watching this explainer can learn and apply to their own life. It just completely changes the paradigm of what it takes to actually build wealth.
$8 million. When this lifelong janitor retired, his net worth sat at over $8 million. Just let that staggeringly huge number sink in for a second. It sets up this massive, extreme contrast that we're going to reverse engineer today. I mean, how do you get to an $8 million net worth on a blue-collar salary? Well, we're going to unpack this mystery step by step, and by the end of this explainer, that massive number is going to make perfect mathematical sense.
Okay, part one. An ordinary millionaire. So I want you to meet Ronald. Ronald was a school janitor living in the Midwest. And if you were looking from the outside in, his life was incredibly simple. He was literally the definition of an ordinary guy. He worked hard, he kept to himself, and he lived a very quiet, unassuming life in his community. There was absolutely nothing flashy about him. His salary was modest, and because of that, he made very specific lifestyle choices. He drove used cars, he never bought luxury brands, he didn't wear fancy clothes or go on extravagant vacations. Because he lived so simply, his friends and neighbors kind of just assumed he struggled financially. That was the expectation, right? That he was barely scraping by. But the reality? The reality was that, completely under the radar, Ronald was quietly building massive wealth, and nobody suspected a thing.
Part 2. The first investment.
So how did the reality get so far ahead of the expectation? Let's get into the exact mechanics of how he did it, taking it all the way back to the very beginning. The real turning point happened when Ronald was just 25 years old. At 25, he made a decision that would alter the entire trajectory of his life. He opened his first investment account. This right here is where the foundation of that $8 million empire was poured. But here is the absolutely crucial part of this whole story. When he opened that account at age 25, he couldn't invest much. Remember, he was a janitor. He didn't have thousands of dollars sitting around in disposable income. He invested just around $200. $200 every single month. That is a highly accessible number. It really highlights that the barrier to entry for building wealth was not nearly as high as people think. It wasn't about having a huge pile of cash to start. It was simply about starting with whatever he had. And instead of trying to be the smartest guy in the room, or trying to pick the next hot stock, or chasing the latest crypto fad, Ronald kept it incredibly boring. He consistently bought low-cost index funds every single month, every single year. It honestly didn't matter if the stock market was up, and it didn't matter if it was down. He just mechanically put that $200 into low-cost index funds, buying a small, diversified slice of the broader market, over and over again.
Part 3. Surviving market crashes.
Now, of course, any journey that spans decades is going to hit turbulence. Over the course of Ronald's working life, recessions hit, markets crashed. And when those crashes happened, his friends and peers panicked. A lot of people sold off their investments out of pure fear, locking in their losses because they were terrified the market would go to zero. But Ronald didn't panic. He held firm. He kept buying. And he was able to do that because of a really counterintuitive mindset shift. When prices fell during a recession, Ronald viewed them as discounts rather than disasters. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. While everyone else was running for the exits, he looked at a market crash as a massive sale. He was getting the exact same index funds, just at a cheaper price. That single mindset, choosing to see a discount instead of a disaster, that's what changed everything for his long-term wealth trajectory.
Part 4. The compound snowball.
All right, so now we need to zoom out a bit from Ronald's personal story and look at the actual math that created that staggering $8 million figure. We are talking about the magic of the compound snowball. This is the underlying engine of wealth that just operated quietly in the background of his life for decades. Here is exactly how that snowball works. Step 1.
His initial investments generated returns. Okay, simple enough. But step 2, those returns then began to earn more returns of their own. Then, those returns earn returns again. And finally, step 3, the snowball becomes enormous over decades. His wealth didn't grow because he eventually earned a huge salary as a head janitor. No, it grew because he gave compound interest enough time to do all the heavy lifting. The longer he left it alone, the faster and larger that snowball grew, quietly compounding year after year, decade after decade.
Part 5. 5 Rules for Wealth.
So when Ronald finally retired, as we know, people were absolutely shocked. He had accumulated millions. And it wasn't from a secret investment, it wasn't from some wild gamble, and it certainly wasn't from getting lucky. He did it by following some incredibly simple rules. So let's transition from Ronald's story into an actionable playbook for you. Let's look at the 5 historical principles for long-term wealth building we can extract here. Number 1, start investing as early as possible. Remember, Ronald started at 25. Time is your most critical ingredient. Number 2, invest consistently every month. That $200 habit, rain or shine. Number 3, ignore short-term market noise. Look for discounts, not disasters. Number 4, keep investment costs low. Buy those boring index funds and avoid high fees. And number 5, stay invested for decades. Let that compound snowball roll. Now, I do want to responsibly remind you that investing always involves risk, right? Future returns are never guaranteed. But historically speaking, these 5 rules have absolutely been the bedrock of long-term wealth building.
Look, most people believe that wealth requires an extraordinary income. They think you absolutely need a massive salary to become a millionaire. But Ronald proves that in reality, extraordinary consistency often matters way more. The biggest advantage you can possibly have isn't spending all your time trying to find the perfect magical stock. It's simply giving your investments enough time to grow. Consistency beats intensity almost every single time.
Which leaves us with one final, very important question to end our explainer today. If you start today, will your future self thank you decades from now? Ronald's future self certainly did. You don't need to be making 6 figures, and you definitely don't need to be some investing genius. You just need to start, stay consistent, and let time do its work. So think about how you can apply these 5 rules to your own financial journey, starting right now. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible story today. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.